Hello, BookTube. I've got a little bit of a comic book extra here for the three of you who watch comic book related videos on this channel, because today I was reminded that, as unbelievable as it is for a 28-year-old sexy influencer to believe, it has been 40 years this month since the appearance of the first issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths from DC Comics. And DC Comics decided to reprint a facsimile issue, a facsimile reprint of Crisis on Infinite Earths #1 with this fold-out George Perez cover. And I took the occasion to get the $4 reprint and reread this issue. I thought I would talk about it just a bit. When am I going to get a chance? The 80th anniversary I will not be around for. This was the brainchild of Marv Wolfman, the writer here, who back in the 80s decided, just on a wild hair, with no justification, I think he heard from one irate fan, that the 50 years of continuity, in other words, the stories that were building up between issues in DC's various characters, and also the companies that DC had bought in the meantime, like Charlton or Fawcett and all of their superhero characters, that all of those continuities were just too complicated to follow. They're just too complicated to follow. I mean, you're talking about Green Arrow. Okay, which Green Arrow are you talking about? Is this the Green Arrow who was operative during the 1940s? Because if it is, it can't be the same Green Arrow who's operative during the early 1970s, with the guy with the goatee. It can't be him. They can't be the same person. And what about Superman? He's changed. And Wonder Woman. Are there two different Aquamen? One in one version of the comics from the 1940s and another in the version of the comics from the 1960s? Isn't this just too complicated? Especially when earlier writers writing comics that Marv Wolfman himself loved as a kid. Earlier writers started noticing that and deciding that there were multiple Earths, infinite Earths, that there were multiple Earths, especially Earth 1 and Earth 2, and that Earth 1 had one set of heroes that are familiar to you, one Wonder Woman, one Superman, one Batman, and Earth 2 had another set of those same heroes. Usually, the difference between the two was that one world was the heroes as they were during the 40s and 50s. And then the other world was the heroes as they were in the revamp, the Silver Age of DC Comics. But in earlier comics that Marv Wolfman loved, and so did I, writers had those two worlds team up. The Justice League and the Justice Society would team up. They would bridge the barrier between their two alternate worlds and have adventures together. So you would have an older, gray at the temples Superman with a younger Superman. You would have all the signature Earth 2 characters like Dr. Midnight or Hourman. You would have them alongside the modern Green Arrow, the modern Wonder Woman, the modern Red Tornado or whatnot. And it wasn't all that hard to follow. Comic book fans weren't complaining. They were okay with multiple worlds, with all kinds of different realities. As long as you explain it, as long as you set up the story correctly, you can get some really, really good stories out of that. DC had done that. The death of Batman, for instance. It's not your Batman or my Batman, it's Earth 1's Batman. It's Earth 2's Batman. It's the Batman who was active during the 1940s. And so on and so forth. You had all sorts of adventures like that proliferating everywhere, just everywhere. And if they were done really well, then you'd get great comics out of them. If they weren't done really well, then people forgot about them. It wasn't saying, and no 18-year-old was going to DC Comics on a rack or in a comic shop and saying, if only the last 50 years of this made more sense, I would buy this issue. No, nobody was thinking that. But Marv Wolfman got it into his head that people were, and got this storyline approved by the powers that be at DC Comics. He imagined a story in which a gigantic cosmic villain is slowly but steadily eliminating all of those alternate worlds one by one. See, you've got bolts of cosmic energy destroying planets. And he imagined that a character that he inserted into a lot of DC Comics at the time and the years leading up to this, a character called the Monitor, a mysterious figure called the Monitor, who appeared to be able to look at all different time periods at the same time and observe all different worlds and all different realities, that this character was slowly gathering the means to assemble a super team to fight that cosmic villain. Teasing the whole time. So you'd get a random issue of whatever, and for one page, this character of the Monitor would appear. And you had no idea who he was. You just had to keep following it. Every time you'd buy a new issue of DC Comics, he'd be in there somewhere. And all the while, this event was looming. And then it launched with this first issue. And this is written by Marv Wolfman, and it's got artwork by George Perez. And it's beautiful artwork by George Perez. And we are introduced right away to a character called Pariah. This guy with blue-gray hair. And there you see a world being destroyed by an antimatter wave. A fairly good visual effect that George Perez is using here. An antimatter wave is approaching this one of many alternate Earths and destroying it. This Earth appears to have no superheroes because they're not responding. Pariah is there, but he can't do anything about it. It's his curse to be present when these worlds are destroyed, but he can't fix them in any way. He can't help anybody. Even a single individual boy, he can't help. He is just cursed to watch this happen over and over again. And as the issue moves forward, we see that wave of antimatter just approaching all sorts of alternate worlds. It's not approaching our key comic book worlds yet, but it approaches, for instance, Earth 3, which is an alternate world in which the superheroes are variants on the Justice League, but they're all evil. And the one superhero on this world is Lex Luthor. And we see the Society of Supervillains here. We see Ultraman and Power Ring, and they are noticing this wall of antimatter and lovely chaotic artwork from Perez. They're noticing it, but they don't appear to be able to do anything about it. And one by one, they're getting destroyed by it. There is this reality's alternate version of Wonder Woman, and she is just destroyed by this antimatter wall. There is Lex Luthor, the world's one remaining superhero, who can't do anything about it. He can just watch these people die. So he decides to fly off in advance of the antimatter wave to his secret hideout, which isn't very secret. It's on a hill in broad daylight. So how he is alive, how the superheroes haven't killed him, I don't know. But he is married to Lois Lane, and they have a child. And in a very conscious echo of the origin story of Superman, they decide to put the child in an interdimensional craft and send him off from their doomed world. So they're going to die, but their son will live and will come to Earth 1. He will come to the home of the superheroes who are going to be fighting this menace in the bulk of this story. There's a really good moment, a little moment. Ultraman, this evil version of Superman, hears from Pariah. They talk to Pariah, and he tells them, your world is doomed. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And Ultraman just walks off. And Power Ring says, Ultraman, wait, what are you doing? And we get a brief glimpse of what this character could have been like if he had been heroic, if he'd been Superman. He says, what I have done all my life, I fight to the very end. He smiles over his shoulder and flies into oblivion. And it destroys him. And this world is destroyed. But we move to the Monitor's headquarters. At long last, we are in the Monitor's headquarters. Keep in mind, we haven't had much explanation here. We know that the Monitor has an assistant named Lila. And here he orders Lila that it is now time for her to split herself into multiple beings, multiple shards of herself, all of which are organically connected to her inner self. They are going to travel throughout space and throughout time to multiple worlds in multiple time periods in order to collect the core cast of characters for this issue. You notice right away when you look at the cover of this issue, if you're a casual comic book fan, or even if you're not a casual comic book fan, you look at this cover, you're immediately going to see that you barely recognize any of these characters. That's Green Lantern, but it's the John Stewart Green Lantern. It's not Hal Jordan. And that is obviously Superman, but if you take a closer look, you'll see it's an older Superman. It's the original Superman, Kal-El with a letter L. Most of these other figures, maybe Firestorm, but most of these other figures, no, not really. Not right away. Lila goes to all of these various figures that seem like the most random selection of heroes and villains you could imagine. We get Solivar, the king of Gorilla City, a dumb concept from the Flash comic. We get, in the 30th century, we get Dawnstar, a winged member of the Legion of Superheroes. Harbinger is what this version of Lila is called. Goes and finds all of these people and just collects them. She goes to the 1940s to collect a lame-ass character named Firebrand, who can make things marginally hotter. She goes to an alternate world to collect a hero called Blue Beetle, who is from the Charlton universe. He was not ever a DC character. He's not known. And in this issue, not only does he hint that he's been gone a long time, no explanation given for that. He says, and here I thought I'd be forgotten after all this time. But also later, when he's together with these other heroes, who we're told are from Earth 1 and Earth 2, none of them recognize him. And he's just one of those characters. You know right away that if you're seeing him, if you know those characters, most of which are really lame knockoffs of the signature characters that you know. DC has a habit of doing this, of acquiring the publishing rights to knock off versions of their own characters. But if you see him, you know that others of those might be in this story. At one point, Harbinger goes to a mental hospital to acquire a villain called the Psycho Pirate, who, when he wears a special mask, allows him to manipulate the emotions of people who look at that mask, who look at his face when it's conveying those emotions. It's a weird choice, and it's made weirder by the fact that this guy is only in a mental institution because he can't handle the emotional effects of the Medusa mask, whereas his predecessor, the first Psycho Pirate, could. So he's damaged goods. He can't handle the power that Harbinger wants to that apparently the Monitor thinks he's essential to have. And he says, find Halstead. He was the first Psycho Pirate. He's better than me. And Lila says, he's dead. But what possible difference would that make if she can go to any point in time? Why is she going here when she can go, 30 years ago or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, find the original Psycho Pirate? Doesn't matter. She also goes to 45 years in the past, when Atlantis was still a land kingdom. She goes in order to find a very gay character that DC did for a while, a sorcerer from pre-underwater Atlantis called Arian. And he doesn't want anything to do with her. He wants to fight her to stop her from taking him, but she takes him anyway. She also goes to Earth 1 to abduct not only Firestorm, but also one of his villains, Killer Frost. She abducts both of them. She wants both of them to bring everybody to Monitor's satellite, his satellite in space. She brings them all there. How she does this, we don't know. Does she have the power to do this? If she has the power to do this, why can't she go to that enemy of the Monitors who's sending these antimatter waves to every planet in the multiverse and simply whisk him away? There might be limits to his power, but we do get this big double-page spread of all these beings, heroes and villains, together. We see not only some of the characters who have been abducted, but some of the characters that have also been abducted whose abduction we did not see. So we have a big cast, much bigger than just the people who were snatched. And we have all sorts of confusing things here. It's a very good visual. But Blue Beetle is saying none of these people have ever heard of Blue Beetle. Why not? Why not? If he's taken from either one, or Earth 1 or Earth 2, then I guess maybe he's been in retirement. It's never explained. We get these characters just sort of gazing around each other, but also ignoring each other. Like, for instance, Superman calls out to Firebrand. They're both 1940s heroes. They know each other. He calls out to her, and she ignores him. She flies right by him. And Obsidian, a lame-ass hero, says, I think she's as stunned for this as all the rest of us are. But if you were in a situation like this where you're plucked out of nowhere, the first thing you would do is gravitate towards people that you know. A lot of these characters don't know each other, and a lot of them are very minor. Shall we go through the list? There's Blue Beetle. There's Dawnstar from the Legion of Superheroes. There's King Solovar from Gorilla City. That guy in a nightgown up on the balcony there is a character named Simon, who has incredible mental powers and a fishbowl for a brain. We have Geoforce, an unbelievably D-list character from The Outsiders. Cyborg from the new Teen Titans. We have Psycho Pirate, who seems to be keeping to himself. We have the original Superman, Superman of Earth 2. We have Firebrand. We have Obsidian and the John Stewart Green Lantern. We have Arion from 42,000 years ago in Atlantis. We have Firestorm and Killer Frost. And we also have Dr. Polaris, a supervillain who can manipulate metal. And they are all gathered together when suddenly they are attacked by amorphous shadow creatures that come sprawling out of nowhere and attacking these people. So we get to see these characters in action. And it doesn't go well. The characters, for instance, Green Lantern learns that his energy beams go right through these creatures. But Superman can still punch them. It just doesn't seem to hurt them much. Energy forces either work or don't work, depending. You've got Firebrand is able to fire bolts of flame. They don't slow these things down much. Cyborg says that he is slamming them with million decibels of white sound, and these things are just eating it up. And apparently that's not affecting the ears of anyone around him. These characters they either keep fighting or keep dodging, but they're not having much in the way of success when suddenly they are engulfed in a bright white light. Great Perez artwork there. And the shadows all disappear, and we meet the Monitor. In the issue's concluding panel, we meet the Monitor, who tells them all that he has summoned them here because their universes are all in danger. And that's how this first issue ended. And I had my quibbles with it. I thought, when this first came out, I thought, surely this is going to be self-contained. It looks like not. It looks like, and the rumors that I've read in Comics Journal, Amazing Hero, it sounds like you're going to try to rewrite DC history, but surely you're not going to do that. Because I'm invested in that history, and so are thousands and thousands of other readers. Surely you're not going to do that just because you can. Just because Dick Giordano said you could. Surely you're not going to do that, so this will be a self-contained event, and therefore it will be fairly interesting. And so I was curious to know how it would go on. Although I did have a big question. And amazingly, it's a question that Marv Wolfman has Lila ask to the Monitor. She says, I still fail to understand, why not both Supermans and Wonder Womans? Why not the most powerful of those we've observed? That makes perfect sense. Why not? Why not both Superman or 10 Superman or 40,000 Superman? Why not Captain Marvel? He's not here. Of the Legion of Superheroes, you pick Dawnstar? Dawnstar has big white wings. She can survive in the hard vacuum of outer space, and she can travel under her own power faster than, I think, any other Legionnaire, even Superboy, even Mon-El. She seems to me to be the fastest moving Legionnaire of them all in open space. But that's it. That's all. She's a great tracker, but that's it. Whereas the Legion has members like Superboy, or Mon-El, or Supergirl, or Wildfire, who are immensely powerful. Not that much slower than Dawnstar, but immensely more powerful. So I second Lila's question. Why not get the most powerful people that we have seen? Why not the Spectre, or Dr. Fate, or a dozen Green Lanterns? Why on earth would you need Solovar, the king of Gorilla City? Why on earth would you need him? And the Monitor says, I have analyzed all those with power in the past, present, and future, and our greatest hope lies with both so-called heroes and villains fighting alongside each other. Simon kills people. Dr. Polaris holds whole cities at ransom under pain of having gigantic rains of jagged metal thrown down on them if he doesn't get his money. He's not a so-called villain. They're not so-called villains. They are villains. But that's what he tells her. He tells her this cast has been chosen for very particular reasons. I guess one of the main reasons is that he wants villains and heroes to work together, but that actually underscores Lila's question, because there are plenty more powerful villains than the ones we get here. Plenty more powerful. We don't get them. And when I read that, I thought, all right, well, this is a really eclectic group of characters. But if you're going to claim in this story that there is some reason why these characters will all be essential, and maybe we'll see them grow, maybe we'll see them become some sort of a team, as weird a collection as they are, this assortment of characters had never been assembled together before, well, that could be interesting. If you've got a story like that in mind, that could be interesting. And it wasn't much longer than issue number 1 before I realized that wasn't true, that Marv Wolfman did not have that story in mind. He didn't have anything like that kind of a story in mind. And, of course, the story follows its natural progression, so that by issue number 6, 7, thereabouts, the core cast of people who are doing anything are the most powerful characters. We are dealing with those Supermen. We are dealing with a new Dr. Light, who's incredibly powerful. We're dealing with Mon-El from the Legion of Superheroes. Dawnstar is long gone. King Solivar is long gone. We are dealing with Captain Marvel and whatnot. And Supergirl, tragically. Because as this series went on, it became obvious that the DC powers that be had given Marv Wolfman a blank check to do whatever he wanted. He couldn't kill marquee characters, Batman, Superman. But the fact that there are multiple realities gives him a little leeway there, right? I mean, if your bosses say you can't kill Superman, they might mean only Earth 2 Superman or Earth 1 Superman. What about Wonder Woman? Infamously, a Wonder Woman does die in the course of Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's just not it's not the right Wonder Woman. And famously, in the course of this series, the Barry Allen, the Silver Age version of the Flash, and also Supergirl, both die in the series. And so do a lot of alternate worlds, in order to do what Marv Wolfman thought was a good idea, which is to smooth out the continuity. It wasn't a good idea. It raised more questions than it answered. And it all started here. 40 years ago, it started here with Crisis on Infinite Earths number 1. So I had my surly houseboy go out and get the facsimile reprint. Amazing. And it brought back a lot of memories that I wanted to share tediously with you. It brought back a lot of memories of how much my hopes were raised that this might be something really special. That it might be a lot of fun and self-contained and then wrapped up and done. So that, of course, the broader DC continuity is not affected in any way. I didn't get that. I didn't get either one of those things. It wasn't all wrapped up. It's taken decades to undo the damage of Crisis on Infinite Earths, when it would be easy to do. It would be easy to fix the damage that this series did. Simply announce that early next year, DC will do an event called Anti-Crisis, in which both the Monitor and the villain, to be revealed later in these issues, reappear. Somehow, they both reappear. And they want to do something, some cosmic, MacGuffin or whatever. And it brings all the realities, profusely multiplying all over the place again. And at the end of Anti-Crisis, everything is as it was before. All the events of Crisis on Infinite Earth have been removed. That would be wonderful. Find a writer to do that. Is Marv Wolfman still alive? He might be willing to do that. Find a writer to do that. Find an artist who's not in the industry now, somebody who can do this, somebody who could do a great job on it. My own vote would be Phil Jimenez. And turn them loose on a 12-issue miniseries that is designed to revamp the continuity to pre-Crisis. And then don't ever do this again. Don't ever do anything like this again. But still, I don't think DC is going to do commemorative facsimile editions of every issue of Crisis. That would be amazing if they did. If we get issue number 2 next month, that would be incredible. Because my issues are falling apart. My original issues are falling apart. But anyway, that's your comic book extra for today. Any of you who are long-term comic book fans, this is going to make you feel really old. Because it has been exactly 40 years since this appeared. Amazing. Or is it more than that? This came out in 1984. No, that's right. That's 40 years, right? Uh, well, anyway, it feels like it. So that's your your comic book extra for today. Crisis on Infinite Earths #1. So I'll be back next Wednesday with more comics talk. Thank you, BookTube.